There are things that buyers say every single day in Ottawa that are totally normal, things that are helpful, and those phrases can quietly cost you money. They're not dramatic mistakes, and they're not things that blow up a deal overnight. They are small things said at the wrong moment to the wrong person in the wrong context. And why this is important is most buyers have no idea they're even doing it. This video is about giving you a firewall, some protection, so you can still be honest with your agent. You're just gonna have to stop handing over your leverage before you even need to. I've been selling real estate in Ottawa for about 15 years now. I've worked with buyers and sellers across this city, and one thing that I've learned is that Ottawa is a collection of micro markets, and they behave differently from each other. A freehold townhouse in Barrhaven does not represent the same way that a condo sells in downtown. And a bungalow in Alta Vista reacts differently than a split level here in Nepean. One street can be busy and the next street can be extremely quiet. So when you give your agent the wrong information at the wrong time, those words can ripple through your entire buying process. This is not a video about distrusting your agent or putting them down, as most agents in Ottawa are solid professionals and they do, honestly, a really good job. This is about understanding that a good agent working with the wrong information can unintentionally work against your position. The buyers who've come out ahead are not always the ones with the most money. They're usually the ones who stay clear-headed the longest, meaning they don't make decisions when they're in an emotional state. So here's what we're going to cover. The one thing buyers say that makes agents show them more expensive houses, the sentence that completely weakens your negotiating position, why saying you're working with multiple agents actually works against you, the mistake buyers make during offers that cost them the control, and the one almost everyone says inside the house that can cost them a deal before it even starts. So the first mistake here is telling your agent exactly how much you make and what you have saved. Your agent does not need your salary. They don't need your savings balance, your credit score, your inheritance story, or the phrase, we can go a little bit higher if we have to. Your lender needs all of those things, yes, and your agent needs really just two things. Are you pre-approved, and what is your maximum purchase price that you're comfortable spending? That's really it. And here's why that distinction is important. Is because the moment someone in the process knows you have room, financial breathing room, above your stated planned budget, well, the dynamic shifts. And it's not meticulous or something they plan. It just sometimes happens unconsciously. But people stop thinking about your comfort zone and they start thinking about your capacity. And those things are honestly not the same. So there is a number for your lender that approves you for. And then there is a number that actually lets you sleep at night. Those two figures are rarely the same. Your agent needs to be working from the second one. I've seen this pattern play out so many times where buyers who overshare their finances early in the process end up in homes that are technically within their budget, yes, but stretch beyond what feels comfortable 6 months later. This is often what we call house rich and mortgage poor. The number is doable, but it doesn't support the lifestyle you wanted. So what to say instead is you tell your agent, we're pre-approved for X, but our comfort zone is Y, and we only want to see a home that fits within that payment range. That's all your agent really needs to do their job well. Because what I see too often is people get into an offer position, and then because they've said they might be able to go a little bit higher, and depending if you're competing or not, this is when decisions can be made that have regrets. People offer a little bit more than they were originally comfortable with because of the situation. And it doesn't mean every single time that's going to happen, but it's good to know where your comfort zone is and to make sure your agent tries to keep you within it. So another mistake is we have to buy by this date or we are going to be in trouble. And I mean, life creates deadlines. Maybe your lease is ending, maybe your job transfer, maybe there's a growing family or a relationship changes, and those are all understandable things. And I'm not saying hide your life from your agent. What I'm saying is don't lead with that urgency. Here's the problem with urgency in a real estate sale, is that urgency becomes a negotiation power. At a deadline, once it's visible to the people on the other side of the sale, they can use that against you. But it can be used intentionally or not to pressure you into removing conditions, raising your price beyond what your data supports or what you want. Maybe it's accepting the seller's terms that don't actually protect you. But there's something I've noticed over the years that buyers consistently underestimate. They think the pressure from a transaction is coming from the market. But a lot of the time, the pressure is coming from their own calendar or their own circumstances. When they have a deadline that takes over a deal, you stop evaluating the house and you start evaluating your calendar and your deadline. And those are completely different decisions. One is evaluating the house and the market and figuring out what price makes sense. And the other one is evaluating your calendar and what price you need to be able to get this done on time. And that's a dangerous position to be in, because buying the wrong house to solve like a short-term schedule issue, that's how people end up with years of regret over what felt like a 2-week crisis. So here's what I suggest to say instead. We have a preferred timeline, but we're not going to be rushing our decision. We do need the right home on the right term. It keeps the pressure on the sidelines and allows you to focus on finding the right house and the right fit. So the other mistake I see is people say, I'm working with a few agents right now. And I want to be direct about this one, because I think buyers sometimes believe this approach, it gives them like more options or probably more leverage, and it usually does, quite frankly, like the opposite. So when you tell a realtor, especially in the very first meeting you have, that you're working with multiple agents simultaneously, they do a quick calculation. So they look at their times, they're in the evening, the weekends, the gas money, their strategy to help you find the right house. Maybe it's an off-market property conversation they've had. They put all that into that deal. And if there's multiple agents, there is a real chance that they'll do all that work potentially and get nothing to show for it. I remember sitting across the table at an initial buyer's meeting one time, and it was a lovely couple, and the husband told us, well, we're not even sure we want to work with you, which is fair. We encourage people to interview more than one agent. But I remember as I sat down, the next thing I said was, well, I'm not even sure I want to work with you. And I meant it jokingly, and his wife laughed. She thought it was great. He didn't think it was all that funny, but it does show that when you're hiring an agent, you want their commitment. You want to know they're on your side no matter what happens during the process. And the same thing goes for your agent. It doesn't mean you're stuck with working with them if they end up being a dud and know nothing about the neighborhood or the price or the market of what you're looking for. But it's a relationship. It's not just a transaction. So having two people who are somewhat committed to each other for a short period of time is typically what helps buyers get the best out of their process. And the truth about all of this is that agents in Ottawa who usually protect their clients well, who do a really good job, they're the ones who have real sales experience, get lots of referrals, have a great reputation, knowledge, the genuine negotiating skills. Those are the agents who have choices. So if you want to work with one of these good agents in the city, it might backfire by you saying you're going to potentially work with many others at the same time. So what that means for you is that if you want access to these good agents, to their best guidance in the market, you need to commit to someone. Interview the agents, ask them real questions, look them in the eye and see if they're someone you can trust. Then choose one and go all in on that experience with them. The experience you get from a real working relationship where your agent knows the non-negotiables, your budget priorities, your discipline, let's say your risk tolerance. This is extremely important, and it's different from random showings with random agents at different times. People who honestly just don't really know you. So say this instead. We're interviewing agents this week and we'll commit to one before we start looking seriously. Then do exactly that. Talk to agents. Interview the one you like. Pick the one that's the right fit, not just the one that tells you what you want to hear. So another mistake I often see is you hear buyers say, we really love this house and we'll pay whatever it takes. So like walk through any resale home in Ottawa right now, you have to assume that someone is listening in on you. There's security systems, there's smart doorbells, baby monitors, there's tons of stuff out there that allows a seller to know exactly what you're saying inside their house, whether it's right or wrong. But the moment a seller believes you are emotionally attached to this property, well, your negotiation changes on that place. A counter is harder. They'll hold conditions a little longer. They know you'll absorb more discomfort to be able to get the house because they've already decided you want it. And you're allowed to love a house. You should be able to love a house before you put an offer on it. But the problem is broadcasting that love before you control the terms or the process. One of the oldest patterns I've seen in this business is that a buyer who falls in love in the driveway and then wonders why the negotiation felt one-sided or they had to pay more than they expected. Because the seller noticed, let's say they were down the road in their car waiting for you to finish and they're watching you and your agent have a 30-40 minute conversation in their driveway. It's safe to assume that they have a good sense that you're talking about how much you like this house and how to approach negotiations. But by doing that, you're losing a bit of leverage. And once your emotion becomes visible, especially to the other side of the table, well, then all of a sudden you lose your leverage at the negotiating table. Say nothing inside the house. Keep your observations and your reactions professional and neutral when you're there. When you get outside, walk away from the property. Walk to your car. Tell your agent, we like it. Let's look at the numbers and the terms, and that's it. Keep your excitement private. So have a conversation in the phone with your agent about the terms, or even talk about the house at another home as long as it's a different listing agent. So mistake number 5 is people decide they'll waive their inspection if that helps. And I want to be careful here because this one has some nuance to it. There are situations, certain times, certain market conditions where buyers have to make the decision to proceed without the traditional conditions like your financing and your inspection. And that's a real conversation worth having with your agent. So here's what I want you to understand is that waiving an inspection is not just a paperwork decision, it is a risk decision and a risk tolerance level. And specifically here in Ottawa, this risk is not evenly distributed. Ottawa has a significant amount of older housing stock, especially in the core of the city, homes that are built from the 40s and onward. But there are issues with these homes. There could be poly B plumbing, which is like that gray flexible pipe. And unfortunately, the fittings, they tend to fail. And usually when they fail, they're failing behind a wall. Another one is knob and tube wiring or aluminum wiring. These are things that you're going to have to check and have an electrician do work on, which creates more cost for you to be moving in. It also creates potential insurance complications if you didn't know about this ahead of time. Maybe the roof is ending its life expectancy. Maybe the HVAC system needs replacing. Maybe there is a foundation movement or a crack that wasn't visible but needs to be disclosed, but you wouldn't find it without doing a home inspection. Then there are the renovated properties. Some of the riskiest homes I've seen have been the ones that look amazing at first glance. They might be a beautifully staged flip, and maybe that's hiding years of maintenance issues that was never taken care of with brand new counters, fresh paint, and a finished basement. Homes that punish buyers when they move in with high repair costs are rarely the ones that look rough because you know what you're getting with them. Often it's the ones that looked quite fine or even amazing. Because that's when problems, they don't announce themselves. If you have a house that looks rough, you know what you're getting. So that's why keeping your conditions in your offer can be important. Because it exists to be able to give you time to look at the property you're planning to commit to for a long time. So here's my suggested wording for what to say. You want to say, let's build the strongest offer we can while still protecting ourselves. That might mean, let's say, a pre-inspection if the seller allows it. That would be an inspection that you have before you put the offer in, which is frustrating because you might have to spend $500-$600 on an inspection for a house you might not even know you get, but it could be a way to balance out the risk tolerance, especially if you're competing with other buyers. Or maybe instead of doing it ahead of time, you simply shorten the condition window down from 5 to, let's say, 2 days. And you find an inspector who's available the next day. Those are things sellers will value. So there are ways to compete in a tight market without having to remove all the things that protect you. So if your agent is pressuring you to take on the risk without fully explaining what the consequences are that you're giving up by removing your financing and your inspection conditions, that honestly is a pretty big red flag. Your agent's job is to help you with this process and win the right house, not just win a house for them to be able to get a sale. So the real message across all of these mistakes is communicate like you're a strategist. Plan ahead of time. Tell your agent what they need to do the job well. Give them the information that helps them represent you. But stop handing over your leverage, your urgency, your price maximum, your ceiling, your emotions before the deal even has any reason to do so. The buyers who do best in Ottawa are not the ones who make the biggest noise to be able to find the best deal. They're typically the ones who are not the most enthusiastic throughout the process. They're the ones who've thought ahead, made a plan, stayed disciplined, and gone through their process and allow that to work in their favor. So if you found this video useful, I'm put together a video on common mistakes that buyers make when they're going through the entire purchase process. It pairs well to, I think, what we've talked about here today. And that video is called Avoid These Mistakes When Buying a Home. And I'll link it here down below, and I'll see you on the next one.